Hey guys, Odahar here. In the previous video, we learned how to use the path variable in Windows in order to manage different versions of Python at the same time. And in this video, we are going to discuss virtual environments real quick and what their purpose is. Well, their main purpose probably is that they just let you have different versions of a particular module at the same time without affecting your system-wide installation of Python. Now, what does this mean? Let's say that you have some project using Django, for example. Right here, Django is a powerful backend tool that lets you create websites, installs like a module. It's very versatile, very, very cool. You could create a huge website with it just by yourself, basically. It just unlocks tons of functionality. So let's say that you're using an older version of Django. You have created a pretty cool website. You're very happy with it. Let's say you've created for a client. Maybe it's even some kind of a business thing. You're making some money. You're freelancing, whatever. And a new version of Django comes out. And if you want to try this new version of Django, well, what are you going to do? If you install the new version of Django on your system-wide installation of Python and you haven't created a virtual environment for the previous one, well, this is going to break everything. Maybe there is something in the new Django that is in conflict with your old project, that it's going to make things break and your old project is not going to work anymore. What are you going to do in this case? Well, you're going to install the new Django, the new version of Django, in a new separate virtual environment. You're going to create a virtual environment and you're going to put the new version in the new virtual environment without affecting the old one at all. Like, the old one is still going to be 100% functional. It's going to be using the old version of Django. Everything is going to be working as expected. So this is probably the greatest advantage of using virtual environments. But one other excellent advantage is, particularly for me, is because I'm pretty disorganized and I forget things. I'm pretty awful at managing large projects or multiple small projects. So for me, it's pretty useful to have separate virtual environments for every project, because then, especially if they're well named, the virtual environments, because then I could easily find what I've been working on and I have all the modules that I need there. If I install something on the system installation of Python, well, that doesn't affect anything because everything is contained, separate, neatly tucked away in separate little folders for each individual project. So virtual environments, pretty important. Let's fire up the command prompt and let's create a couple. By the way, virtual environment is a module. So you install it with pip. Basically pip install virtual environment like this. In this case, I already have it, but if you don't, it's going to install here. Now let's go to the desktop or any directory where you want to create your virtual environment. But in this case, we're going to be able to see it here. So we're going to do it on the desktop and type virtualenv and type the name of the environment you want to create. Now, in my case, I just want to name it something that describes the project that I'm working on. But I'm also going to throw in the version of Python I'm using because maybe that's relevant. So let's say Python 3.9.0. And let's say I'm making some kind of an Excel parser. So I'm going to call it Excel parser. Like this. What's going on? virtualenv is not recognized. Okay, this is pretty unexpected. virtualenv is installed. Maybe I made a typing mistake. So let's try again. virtualenv. And let's go P390 Excel parser. Now it worked. Maybe I typed something wrong. I don't know. There you go. This is the virtual environment that we just created. As you can see, it's just a directory full of stuff that just showed up on our desktop. Let's go in. CDP 390 blah blah blah. And let's see what's inside. Inside we have a scripts folder. And a scripts folder we also had for a system-wide installation of Python, if you remember. So let's go to scripts. What do we have inside? Well, inside this folder, we have another pip executable. So remember, every module, each module that we install in the virtual environment is just going to stay here in the virtual environment. Up here, we have an activate script. This is how we start the virtual environment, because at the moment, we're not in the virtual environment. We're in the directory, we're in the folder, but it's not activated. So if we do pip install now, it's still going to be our system-wide installation of Python that's going to get this module and not the virtual environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to type activate. This is basically just a little script right here, a little bit of code that's going to now switch everything on. There you go, you see this? This means that we're now in the virtual environment. Let's clear this. And from here, let's install a module that, this was an Excel parser, so we're going to install XLRD. Pip install XLRD. Basically, what XLRD does is it lets you read data from an Excel file, and then use the Python language to do whatever you want with this data, basically. Just parse it, look for stuff, whatever you want, and then you could use this information for basically whatever you could use information for in Python. It's very, very, very powerful, and an excellent way to deal with Excel data. Even if you have expensive Excel software from Microsoft, that still offers more functionality in some cases. So, okay, let's go with piplist. Cool, XLRD, we have this here. But if we opened another command prompt and we do piplist here, this is, remember, this is our Python system-wide installation. It's not the virtual environment. So they differ. There is no XLRD here, and there's a bunch of stuff here that's not in here. Completely separate. This is why virtual environments are so powerful. Let's close this. And let's go back to the desktop, yeah. And let's create one more. Now we're going to have two separate projects with two separate sets of modules. Let's go another one, virtualenv. And we're going to call this one P390 underscore. And what's this going to be? So simple API. We're going to call it simple API. And we're going to install Flask. By the way, this is a little bit weird. I forgot to exit the previous virtual environment, and I created one on the desktop. Let's see if this did anything at all. First of all, to exit a virtual environment, just type deactivate. Deactivate. Now we're no longer in the virtual environment. Let's clean this and let's go and see what we had here. Well, it did seem to create it. So my guess is that it's still going to work. So let's go inside CD 390. Okay, 390. Very tired already. And let's go with simple API. Again, we have the scripts folder. Let's go with cd scripts. Activate. And this is now the simple API. We're in a totally different virtual environment at the moment. So let's see what we have at the moment with piplist. I'm just curious if maybe it's going to refuse to work. But no, it works just as well as expected. This is, of course, a little mistake I made now, and I'm not going to re-record because I'm already pretty tired. But we were within the previous virtual environment and created a new one. Apparently, this is not dramatic. Just remember to deactivate or start a new command prompt and then create your new, fresh virtual environment. And here, let's say pip install Flask, because we wanted to create a simple API, and Flask is perfect for a simple API. Now Flask is installing. Again, piplist. Well, piplist without the Y. Right, what do we have here? Well, Flask installs a bunch of stuff, by the way. So we have Flask here, and the extra stuff, Werkzeug, it installs as well. This thing, I do not know what this does. But yeah, we see all these extra cool modules, and I think I had Flask previously. I had it installed on the 3.9.0 previously. That's why we saw so many packages earlier. Anyway, the main thing that I want to show you is that it's totally separate. It's totally different. This virtual environment has nothing to do with the other virtual environment that we created earlier. This is the modules in the first one, and this is the modules in the second one. As you can see, totally different. Now, we have created those virtual environments. That's great, and we could actually have, let's say, I think I created some kind of hello world. Let's say we can throw in hello world in here in our Excel parser. By the way, I usually keep my scripts right here inside the folder. This is just a little bit more. It's easier to find. It's otherwise gets a little bit difficult. It gets too messy. If all the Python files associated with this project are in this folder. Personally, I find it much easier to work with, but they don't have to be. Later on, we're going to use, actually right away, we're going to use this example.py file that's just on the desktop. It's not in either of those virtual environment folders, but it's still going to be executed from within a virtual environment. That's because where this file is irrelevant. This is just for you. This is just so it's easier for you to find what you're looking for. So this hello world, we could execute it something like this. Let's go, by the way, we're in the wrong one now, so let's go back to desktop. Sorry, I'm just not great at navigating here. And let's enter the other one where we put the thing. So the other one's called Excel parser. Okay, so here we had the hello world. Now here you could just say Python and then hello world.py, and there you go. You execute the file from within the virtual environment in the command prompt. But that's not super convenient, right? Wouldn't it be nicer if we could use Sublime? I don't know if you're familiar, but Sublime, excellent text editor. I don't know if I already praised it in this video, but yeah, just go ahead and download it and start working with it. It's proprietary. You have to pay maybe at some point, but I haven't for this one because, well, I don't think they force you. They force you to, but still, if you're pleased with the software, you can pay. Anyway, let's close this real quick, or actually, let's not close it, and let's think about how we could start Sublime from within this virtual environment. Now, if you watched the previous video, you probably already have an idea. If we could just, like we did here with Python, like we executed Python from within the virtual environment, if we could also execute Sublime from within the virtual environment, well, that would be pretty cool. Then we could use it to work only with the Python files from within here. So how could we do this? If you thought that you could just type something like Sublime and press enter, excellent. This is exactly how we're going to do it. Only Sublime starts with SUBL, not with the full word like in Linux. So let's hit enter, and then it starts. Now for you, it may not start right away. If you saw the previous video, you know why it started for me, because I went here, I found my environment variables in Windows, right here, the path variable, and I added Sublime. So I just hit new, press new here, and then I just added the directory for Sublime. So now every time I type SUBL from within the command prompt, it gets executed. Go ahead, Sublime, and let's discuss real quick this tiny little script I have written that was on my desktop. What it does is it imports a system module. This is already in Python, so we don't need to install anything extra. Then it prints what version of Python we're using, and then it just basically checks if Flask has been installed. If Flask has been installed, it's going to say, yeah, Flask has been installed. If it's not, it's going to say it's not been installed. That's basically all this does. And then it prints all the directories associated with our project, with this, basically not with example PI, but with the Python that we're using to run this, all the cool executables in the background that are responsible for our code running. It's going to print all the directories that are associated with that, with our virtual environments, basically. So now if we hit Control B, you're going to, first of all, we started it from where? We started from Simple API, and if you remember, for Simple API earlier on, we installed Flask. So now it says Flask is installed. Then, first of all, by the way, it told us what version we're using. All of us are going to, or all of our virtual environments are going to be using 3.9.0. Then it says Flask is installed, and then it gives us all the associated directories. And down here, we have our virtual environment. So all the files that we work on now will be executed from within that virtual environment. This is, first of all, let's quickly clarify, this is only good for small scripts, for small projects, for stuff that's a few pages, basically. For stuff that's a few lines, that is small and automate some tasks on your system. This channel has nothing to do with software development. I'm not here to learn or to teach how to do complex debugging and software development. This is just so you can run quick script, because later on we're going to get into cooler stuff. This is not a programming channel. Python is just at the beginning, just a quick start, because for the stuff that we are going to discuss later, it's definitely a great advantage to know how a programming language works and how to use it to automate and to make some tasks a little bit easier. It makes life easier in general. So let's go ahead and close that, and let's start Sublime just from here, right? It's not from the virtual environment. We started from down here, and let's hit Control B again. Well, now it says something else. Now it says Flask is not installed, because for our system installation of Python, we don't have Flask, right? And now right here, it does not give us the directories to the virtual environments, because we're not in a virtual environment anymore. Okay, so let's close that. And by the way, let's quickly deactivate this one. And let's go into the other one, right? Let's go into P, what was it, 390 underscore. Where were we now? Oh no, I'm sorry. Where were we here? Yeah, so we were in simple API, and so now we're gonna activate the other one, which we already were in. So I'm sorry, I exited. I shouldn't have. P390 underscore Excel parser, and here we had, I think, scripts, and here is the activate script. Activate. Bam. Now we're in the Excel parser. We're not in the simple API, we're in the Excel parser. So let's start Sublime from here. From here, there is no Flask. We didn't install Flask on this one. If you remember up here, all the way up here, there is no Flask. So let's see what it's going to tell us when we start Sublime. We started Sublime. Let's hit Control B. Great. Flask is not installed. No surprise there. We didn't install it. And look at this now. It's now telling us that it's starting, that it's executing this code, and all the directories associated with the Python files are listed here, and down here are the folders to our virtual environment. So it worked. It worked in essence. Just remember, put the files for each individual projects, for each individual virtual environment in that virtual environment to avoid confusion, because this, for example, is on the desktop and it's running nonetheless. I know Python, managing Python versions and Python virtual environments can be pretty complicated. And I'm not super good at explaining. I'm also not at all experienced with making YouTube videos or with explaining stuff to people. So probably this didn't definitively show you everything you needed to know, but I hope it did help a bit. And for the next videos, we're going to do a speed run. No, first we're going to do all of this stuff that we did here, but we're going to do it in Linux. So we're going to learn how to set up stuff in Linux. And then we're going to stay in Linux because, well, we're going to learn pretty much all the stuff that we're going to learn from within a Linux environment. And we're going to deal with Windows when we either show how to defend it or how to manage it or how to look for some stuff there, vulnerabilities, stuff like that. But that's going to come a little bit later. And other than that, we're just going to stay within Linux. And another thing, after that, we're just going to do a speed run of the most important things in the Python programming language. There's tons of cookbook tutorials online. We're just going to do a very quick speed run, and we're going to kind of focus on things that at the beginning were difficult for me. I remember at the beginning I was struggling to understand the try except block, for example, and I should have learned that early on because it's super, super useful and it's not difficult to understand. But if you're just watching cookbook tutorials, it's not very clear what this is for. So we're going to discuss certain things and what their purpose is and ways to just kind of teach yourself Python. And there's not going to be a lot of emphasis on cookbook stuff. And then we're going to move on, maybe some scripting, and we see. Then it's going to be cooler stuff. Okay, thank you so much for watching. This is my second video. There's probably nobody even seeing this, but in case you did see it, please leave me a like, comment, whatever you do on YouTube. Thank you so much. Okay, bye.